When we first arrived in the US, we came to Cleveland, Ohio. We lived in an apartment building where many other newcomers were living as well. Once, an elderly lady from upstairs knocked on our door. My mother opened the door and her facial expressions couldn't hide her surprise. The old lady was dressed like teenage girls dress up when they go to a dance party, if their parents are not watching. Seeing my mother's surprise, the neighbor explained everything. We are immigrants. We must dress like Americans. When we arrived here, we wanted to do everything like they do it here. We started dressing like Americans. We started changing our names to more American-sounding ones. I remember how kids were embarrassed when their parents spoke with them in Russian in presence of their American friends. And this is not unique to our immigration. We, the Jews from the former Soviet Union, were exchanging one non-Jewish culture on another non-Jewish culture. But our experience can help us understand those who came here in the beginning of the 20th century. In the first quarter of the 20th century, almost 3 million Jews came from Eastern Europe to the US. Majority of them lived like Jews back in the old country. But when they arrived here, they became immigrants according to the definition of our neighbor. They changed their names, they started dressing like they dress in America, and they didn't even bother trying to teach Jewish language to their children. Why do they need it here? A person's name is his self-identification. A person's clothing is how he expresses himself to those who see him. A person's language is a tool of forming his thoughts and a way of expressing himself to those who hear him. These three things are the most basic expressions of person's individuality. This is why real immigrants, according to our neighbor, must change in these three areas. An immigrant, according to her, is a person who loses his identity and now gets a new one. When our ancestors lived in Egypt 3,500 years ago, they were very much influenced by their environment. Egypt was an immoral society, and unfortunately, it affected the Jews. However, they were able to retain three things: their clothing, their language, and their names. With this, they remained Jews in their own eyes and in the eyes of all those around them. They did not become immigrants according to our neighbor. And the Torah says that this was what enabled them to leave Egypt later on. Today, thank God, Jews do not have to hide in the underground. When I walk down the street, I want everyone to see that I am a Jew. When I introduce myself to others, I want them to hear my Jewish name. I speak several languages, but Hebrew is the language that forms my thinking. Rabbi Zalman Posner wrote a wonderful book which came out here in America. He titled it, "Speak English, but Think Jewish." I live among other nations. I work among them and I take part in the life of their society. But I retain my identity. I am a Jew. I'm not an immigrant.